In the matter of State versus David Williams, case 1919-03234, and I see that Mr. Deasing and Mr. Bushnell are here for the State, and Mr. Bugden is here for Mr. Williams, who is joining us in the courtroom. And good morning, Mr. Williams. We are here for sentencing. I have reviewed the pre-sentence report. Have the parties also had an opportunity to review the pre-sentence report?
We have, Judge.
Thank you. And I also reviewed the memorandum that you submitted, Mr. Bugden, and I am ready to hear first from you, Mr. Bugden, whether we need to make any corrections to the pre-sentence report.
No, Judge.
All right, thank you. Then how I normally proceed with sentencing is I like to hear first from defense counsel, then from the State. If there are any other individuals who would like to address me this morning, I'm happy to hear from them as well, and then I'll hear from Mr. Williams last. Does that work for everybody?
That's great. Sure.
Thank you. Mr. Bugden.
Your Honor, I'll try not to repeat everything that I've written in the memorandum for the court. I recognize that today we're going to be addressing or trying to, you'll be deciding what amount of punishment is appropriate for Mr. Williams, and part of that is also considering protection of the public in the future. Initially, I would say that we disagree or politely dispute some of the allegations that are contained in the pre-sentence report. And I'll just leave it at that to say that I think when we're talking about something that is many, many decades old, there can be memories that aren't completely accurate. We know, for example, that in this case, different victims have spoken to one another about what supposedly happened to them. And we think that some of the memories may not be completely accurate about what happened. In that regard, Kathy Williams, Mrs. Williams, the wife, and Shannon, the daughter, have written letters to the court, and I'm sure you've read those. And I would just indicate that we don't agree, for example, and Kathy Williams is not on trial here, but some of the victims report that abuse happened, that sexual touching happened right in front of Kathy, and Kathy's addressed that in her letter, and it just, we think it's an incorrect memory, and that some of the victims just haven't, for whatever reason, things have been changed in their mind over the years. As Kathy points out, her whole life was spent as a teacher. Her whole life was spent protecting children, nurturing children, taking care of children. And Shannon also has addressed the court in I think, a heartfelt and strong letter as well. And her only point, and the point I'm making here, is that some of the allegations involve sleepovers, and Shannon points out that she's the person that people would have been sleeping over with, and that there were no sleepovers. So I just politely and softly indicate to the court that we don't agree with all of the allegations. But we acknowledge that there certainly was touching, sexual touching, and the sexual touching was inappropriate, and we know that that's inappropriate, Judge. The aggravating circumstances, which the pre-sentence report points out, correctly points out and accurately points out that we're talking about 7 victims, multiple victims, and that this did happen over more than just an occasional touch, and that it was over an extended period of time. So there certainly are aggravating circumstances, and there's no denying that. But there are also mitigating circumstances that I'm not sure that the pre-sentence report really even recognized. Mr. Williams has been involved, was involved, and has been involved in counseling for over 2 decades. In 2007, he disclosed to his bishop and to his wife that he had sexually touched people, and also that he had an addiction to pornography. Through the church, he was referred to LDS Social Services and a therapist by the name of Rick Bashaw that I mentioned in the report. And Mr. Williams was then involved in individual and group therapy for 18 months. And some of the therapy also included sort of family therapy, which Mrs. Williams was also involved in. After he had successfully completed the counseling with Mr. Bashaw, he then continued as what was called a facilitator. And I gave you, in the memorandum I submitted to the court, his workbook or some of the pages from his workbook. But he continued to serve as a facilitator with sex abuse counseling and group therapy for, I think it's 12 years, right up until the time of his arrest, actually. So he continued to be involved in that counseling. Even according to the state's chronology or timetable, Your Honor, I think that the state's, I might have this wrong, and I'm not trying to misrepresent, but I think that the state believes that the last conduct was in 1997, and so 21 years ago. And as I say, my client has not reoffended. He has been involved in counseling that entire period of time. So it's our request, Your Honor, and we recognize that there has to be punishment. There should be punishment. Mr. Williams has been in custody, I think, for about 5 months. And what we're asking the court to consider doing in this matter is don't give him credit for the 5 months, but to impose a suspended prison sentence, consecutive sentencing on 2 of the counts pursuant to the plea agreement, but order that Mr. Williams serve an additional year in the jail. And we think that that is appropriate under the circumstances, which takes into consideration his health. As I indicated in the pre-sentence report, Mr. Williams is just simply not in the best health. He has a pacemaker, he's overweight, and we're concerned that a prison sentence, for all practical purposes, may be a death sentence. So we asked the court to impose a 1-year sentence in addition to the time that he's already served. And we think that the community certainly can be protected, that there can be restrictions that are placed on Mr. Williams. Of course, he'll be a lifetime sex offender, and that the protection of the public can be assured, but some punishment is certainly appropriate, but that's the punishment we're asking the court to impose.
Thank you, Mr. Bugden. I did some quick research, but Westlaw doesn't go back to 1989 or 1997. I assume the sentence for a second-degree felony, even back then, was 1 to 15.
You know, I can't, I'm sorry, I don't know the answer, Judge. I think that that's right, though.
It looked like other sentences were consistent with the, I want to say, conventional sentencing scheme for felony offenses around that period.
Right. And, you know, the sentencing schemes have become much more harsh. You're certainly right about that. But at least at that period of time, it was not unheard of that people would be placed on probation in order to serve jail sentences. We do have this intervening decades because of the delayed report in this case. And I've addressed that as well, talking about the church and the counseling, or I'm sorry, really the advice that the church gave him. I wasn't able to do any more confirmation than what I told you. I spoke to the bishop. I can report to you that what I said in my pre-sentence report, that the bishop said that the church would not allow him to address or to confirm what I've reported to you. And then as chance would have it, I've dealt with Mr. Bashaw, the counselor, and he has dementia, and his records are no longer available. But I have provided to you the facilitator handbook, if you call it that, or workbook that Mr. Williams prepared. So, you know, I realize that this is a tough case, and I realize that we're going to now hear from a number of victims. And again, we recognize that punishment's appropriate, but we just wonder, and we ask the court to consider something less than a prison sentence in this case. Thank you. Thank you,
Mr. Bugden. I just want to make one clarification. When I asked at the outset whether there were any corrections to be made, you indicated no, and then you indicated that you disagreed. I suspect your disagreement doesn't have anything to do with how the report was prepared, but things that were stated, and you don't contest that those things were stated by the victims in preparation for the report.
Right, and we're not asking for any corrections at this point, Your Honor. We're asking you to consider what we think are mitigating factors that I've tried to share with you today. And we're not at all trying to be disrespectful to the victims, but I just think, I know if I was trying to remember something that happened 30 years ago or 20 years ago, memory can become contaminated. I'll just give one very short story, but just to say, when I was younger, I went on a family vacation, and it's been told to me multiple times that as we were driving in the car that had electric windows, I was watching the window go up and down. I kept playing with it. My father got mad, and it was when we'd gone from manual window raising devices to electronic, and I watched my fingers get caught in the frame of the car window frame, and supposedly I was crying but not making any, not screaming out. And the story's been told to me a million times by my mother and by my sister, that all thought it was very funny, but I know I don't remember that. I know it's just that I've been told these things. These victims in this case have talked to one another, Your Honor. One of the victims you're going to hear from, and one of my client's daughters, actively searched out people and talked about allegations and what they remembered had happened to them. So some of the memories we think are not pure ground truth memories. But there's no question that there was sexual touching, and Mr. Williams has acknowledged that. In the pre-sentence report and in his statement to the court, I don't know how there could be a much more clear acceptance of responsibility than what he said in the pre-sentence report, Judge.
Thank you, Mr. Bugden. Mr. Deasing, Mr. Bushnell?
And Judge, I'm going to keep my remarks to the court fairly brief, just because my voice, I think, is the least important voice you're going to hear in the courtroom today. I do want to address a couple of the things Mr. Bugden has raised. When we're talking about memories, there are certainly studies out there, and we know that the memories of children are fallible. There are things that children will remember, and there are things that children will not remember. Remembering your finger being rolled up in a door is probably not something you're going to remember. Having your friend's dad shove their fingers in your vagina while you're sitting on his lap, it's not something you're going to forget. Those are not details that a child is ever going to forget. And those aren't details that are going to be fabricated by virtue of speaking to another individual. That, oh yeah, I now do remember in graphic details being sexually molested in a rocking chair by that same man. That's just, that notion, I think, should just be completely disregarded. When we're talking about the mitigating factors, I think the sheer number of victims here is appalling. This case is without getting too far into overstatement, it seems a lot like the Larry Nassar case, with the sheer number of victims, the delayed report, the type of grooming behaviors that went on, the fact that this sexual abuse was being perpetrated in front of people who theoretically should have been there to stop it. The only mitigating factors that I've heard is that he's an old man, and to the state's mind, I'm glad we caught him before he died, so that he could be held accountable for his actions. In terms of this statement that he hasn't reoffended, we don't know that. Nobody knows that. Mr. Bugden has told Your Honor that many times, that he hasn't done this before. He stopped in 1993. That is unknowable, and we don't know if there are other victims. I can represent confidently to the court that if another victim comes forward, I will continue to prosecute Mr. Williams as victims become comfortable in coming forward and acknowledging what occurred to them. But in the same way that I can't tell Your Honor he has certainly done this many other times, Mr. Bugden cannot tell you that this has never happened before, or has not happened since. In terms of the church counseling, my read of this is he admitted to his wife that he engaged in this conduct, and then did a year and a half of counseling, which to the state's mind seems laughable, that would somehow be an equivalent sort of, this is what I've been doing for 20 or 30 years, and I'm going to do 18 months of counseling, and now I'm good. Even more shocking is that he's placed in a position as a facilitator. I'm confident the irony of that isn't lost on the court, that he's sitting as a facilitator in a sexual abuse counseling session. So the state is asking, and to the state's mind, there really is no other place to send Mr. Williams than the Utah State Prison, given his conduct. 7 little girls were made to suffer over an extraordinarily long period of time. They stayed silent and they've kept this inside for a very, very long period of time. And that shouldn't cut in his favor at all. In fact, that they've had to carry this burden with them should probably count against him. And I would ask the court to send him to the Utah State Prison. And if the court makes that determination, I would hope that the court would send that with a recommendation to the board that they hold him until the day he dies. With that, Your Honor, there are individuals who want to speak to you today.
And Mr. Deasing, before I hear from you, I have just a couple of quick questions. Sure. The first is, I understand, and my recollection was that the state agreed to consecutive sentencing on the prison term on 2 counts. Is that correct? And the second question is the same question I asked Mr. Bugden. Is the prison sentence for crimes in 1989 and 1986 to 1997 on a second-degree felony 1 to 15?
It is 1 to 15, Judge. I researched that in the old books.
Thank you. I didn't have any old books, so I appreciate you checked that up. Mr. Deasing.
Becky Hodgson, Your Honor.
Thank you. Good morning, ma'am.
Good morning. Thank you, Your Honor, for this chance to speak in court today. I want to introduce myself. I am Becky Hodgson. My legal name is Sarah Rebecca Hodgson. Everyone calls me Becky. Growing up, my name is Becky Anderson. My family has lived next door to the Williams family for 29 years. But now they've moved away, so we don't live there, or they don't live next to us anymore. I realize that what I'm about to share won't necessarily have an effect on this case one way or another, or affect its outcome, but I'm hoping it does. And I'm eager to take full advantage of this rare opportunity to speak to David Williams directly, in a safe environment with witnesses and without any interruptions. If that is okay with you, Your Honor.
Absolutely, ma'am.
Speaking to him face-to-face is something I have never been able to do or have been brave enough to do on my own. So I'm very grateful for this chance to do so today. So if it's okay with you, can I reposition myself around the podium, maybe turn this so I can look at him?
Does that work? Mr. Bushnell is offering to rearrange the furniture if you need that.
Is this okay? Am I surprising you? I'll explain the bag in a minute. Doubt whispers in my ear, you are not strong enough to withstand the storm. Today, I whisper back, I am the storm. Dave, I have been anticipating this day for a very long time. But now that it's here, I'm realizing that I have nothing to worry about. You no longer scare me. In fact, you should be afraid of me, because I've told the police about your deepest, darkest secret. I am no longer afraid of you or afraid of hurting those around you by telling your secrets to the authorities. You don't scare me anymore. You don't have control over me anymore. And it feels amazing even though I'm shaking. Dave, you and I are the only two people in this courtroom and in this world that know exactly what you did to me when I was a little girl. So what I'm about to talk about today should not be surprising. You already know most of this, but I want to share it for your family, especially your wife, Kathy, and the other victims here today with us. I want them to hear it. They need to know what you did to me. So now that the whole world knows that you get sexual pleasure from touching little girls' genitals, how does that make you feel, Dave? Now everyone is disgusted by you. Now everyone knows your secret. They know you're a pedophile. It's been all over the news. The West Valley City Police Department even held a news conference about you, with a mugshot plastered on the internet for the entire world to see, especially everyone in our 25th ward. How does that make you feel? Scared, I hope, and ashamed, I hope. Dave, I hope I can get through this next one. Dave, please look at me. Do you remember when I would come over there to your house and play with your daughters and have sleepovers with them? And you would sit in that rocking chair and reach out and grab me and pull me into your lap? Do you remember giggling in my ear as you stuck your hand up my shorts and underneath my underwear? And began rubbing my clitoris, my inner labia, and my vaginal opening. Do you remember that, Dave? I sure do. And do you remember asking me to keep it a secret? Do you remember how many times you did this to me? I lost count years ago. It happened so often that I don't even remember how many times it actually happened at this point. But from reading my journals, which I brought with me today, which is ridiculous, and I'm sorry. There's 13 of them. Whew, I'm not going to fall. I just know it. It's like my total luck.
It wouldn't be the first time, ma'am.
Okay. I'm super clumsy. Okay. But from reading my journal entries, I can testify to you that it happened to me continuously from age 6 to age 9. I remember that I lied to my mom and told her that I wanted to wear pants from now on because my shorts bothered me. But it was really because I don't want you to have easy access to my genitals anymore. I thought wearing pants would make you stop, but it didn't. You just stuck your hands down my pants instead. Do you remember asking me if I liked it? I do. Do you remember what I would say? I would say yes. That is because I thought that you would stop if I told you yes, but you didn't. You just did it more. And if I told you I didn't like it, you'd try something different, over and over again, until I said that I liked it. I remember writing in my journals, and I have them as proof here today. I wrote that you disgusted me. I remember screaming into my pillow at night that I don't like it and that I wish you would die. What I don't understand is how you felt so brave and confident to do this in your own home while your daughters were in the room, especially at our sleepovers. I remember several times when your wife Kathy would be there too, and she'd see you with your hand up my shorts or down my pants, and she'd say nothing. What sort of manipulation and control did you have over her for her not to say anything when she saw this happening? She told my sister once, and I quote, "He just likes to have the kids on his lap." How she could witness you molesting me over and over again, sometimes even carrying on a conversation with you while your hand was rubbing my vagina, and still she says nothing, is beyond me. And how, after finding out that you had confessed to molesting little girls in your past, this is referencing those 6 you confessed to your bishop, could your wife continue to babysit little girls in your home, having them marry you, tempting you? That's sick to me. If you were a drug addict, she wouldn't bring drugs into your home. If you were an alcoholic, she wouldn't bring alcohol into your home. So why little girls? That just baffles me. On 2 different occasions at your home, in the basement, I walked in on you molesting 2 other girls from our ward. Both times, these girls were on your lap. You were in the rocking chair, and your hand was up their shorts, and both times I screamed out for you to stop, and that it was my turn, so they would be protected from you. I shooed them away and got on your lap instead so that I was the one getting molested, not them. I didn't want them to have to hurt like I was hurting. I have asked both of these people if they remember this, and both of them do not. My hope is that is because it only ever happened to them that one time, and they've blocked it from their memories. I'm hoping it's not because they're too afraid to come forward, or for other reasons. You know what makes me so angry about all of this, Dave? It's that I've been so afraid of you for all of these years, and I've allowed that fear to control my decisions in my life. This fear and control you've had over me has kept me silent for decades. I didn't want your family to be torn apart by telling them your secret, or by telling the police your secret. I'm angry at myself for keeping your secret for this long. I have so much guilt inside for not being braver sooner. But I think this all worked out in the end, and it happened exactly how it was supposed to. Did you know that I told my mom when I was 9 that you'd molested me? I got brave one night and blurted it out to her that you touched me where I didn't like it. I pointed to my groin area so she knew what I was talking about. She didn't ask any more questions, though, and I was too afraid to say any more. One of my biggest regrets is not telling her that it was happening all the time and for many years. She thought it was only the one time. So she talked to my dad, and they decided to do nothing about it because it was my word against yours, and who would believe them? Their solution was to have me stay away from your house from now on, so I was banned. I was banned from playing with my 2 best friends, your daughters. I was getting punished for telling the truth. So for me, I didn't feel believed. I felt like they thought I was making it up. I have since had wonderful and healing conversations with my dad about it, and he feels awful for not doing more to protect me. I wish I could have a similar conversation with my mom. Sorry. But as you know, she died when I was in junior high unexpectedly. But banning me from your house also put me in several awkward situations where I had to lie to your daughters and tell them that I was sick or that I couldn't play because they wanted me to come over, but I couldn't, so I lied, and I'd lie to them all the time. Pretty soon they got the idea, stopped asking me to play, which just made them speculate about my intentions. And pretty soon I started hearing rumors about me that I was stuck up and that I hated your daughters and that I was better than them. That couldn't be further from the truth. Those rumors hurt so bad, and they didn't end there. For decades, these same people in your family have been making up rumors about me. Rumors that I'm a slut, rumors that I'm a liar, rumors that I slept around with girls from our ward, Even to this day, they say I'm lying about details about the abuse. But I am here today to testify that these allegations are false, and I'm speaking pure truth, and this is my evidence. After telling my parents when I was 9, I kept the secret, and I didn't tell another soul until I was 17. Oh my goodness. From then on, I would go on to tell many family members and friends, anyone who would listen. But I was still too afraid to go to the police. In the summer of 2005, I finally mustered up the courage to tell my bishop about what you had done to me. Do you remember this? I felt safe doing it at that point in time because I lived a whole state away. He told me we should call your bishop and tell him what you've done so that you can come clean, repent, and get help, since the statute of limitations had passed at that time. So that's what I did. And to my horror, you denied it. You totally denied molesting me. Why did you do that? And what's worse is that you put the seed of doubt in your bishop's mind, Bishop Zumwalt, and then in my bishop's mind, by telling them that I must have the wrong person and that you thought I was actually molested by someone else. So again, now, from my bishop, I am being told that I am wrong, and I am being doubted. The truth is getting doubted again. So how can this be? I was so shocked and horrified. Why did you lie to your bishop? Why? Why didn't you admit it then? And then you went on to confess to molesting 5 other girls to your bishop a few years later, but still denied molesting me? And somehow your wife believed you? Did you know that when you're going through the disfellowshipment process with the LDS Church, I know this personally, that you have to make restitution for injured persons? Did you do that, Dave? Did you reach out to those victims and make restitution? And did you know that our apostles have said, and I quote, and this is also from Richard G. Scott, partial confession by mentioning lesser mistakes will not help you resolve a more serious undisclosed transgression. Essential to forgiveness is a willingness to fully disclose to the Lord, if I can read, and when necessary his priesthood judge all that you have done. Remember, he that covereth his sins shall not prosper, but whoso confesseth and forsaketh them shall have mercy. You can't repent of some of the girls you've molested? Stay awake. I'm still talking to you. You can't repent of some of the girls you've molested, Dave, but then leave the rest of us victims off your list. You can't claim you're a changed man and that you've repented if you haven't confessed to all of your victims. Because if my math is correct, that's now 12 victims you've confessed to, 5 to your bishop, 7 here in court, and there's actually 8, I believe. That's how repentance works, by the way. You're not pulling the wool over anyone's eyes, especially God's. Just about done. Did you know that you've had control over me for all these years, Dave? With your fear that you instilled in me as a child? Those fears have been affirmed, reaffirmed, over and over again throughout my life, by people not remembering things or by people not believing me. But not anymore. Now, you're in handcuffs, sitting here in this courtroom, listening to me tell all these people the truth. People are finally seeing you for who you really are, and all your lies are crumbling. I'm glad you potentially get to spend the last years of your life in prison. It feels so good to finally be believed. You have no idea. You can't hurt any little girls anymore. We are all rising up and taking a stand against you. What you did to me has negatively impacted my life. I still struggle with intrusive thoughts from PTSD from this. I still struggle with anxiety and depression. I've struggled my whole life to have healthy sexual relationships with men because of you. A lot of my divorce was because of this reason, and I blame that on you. In elementary, junior high, and high school, I used to hide in the school bathrooms because of uncontrollable anxiety attacks from what you did to me. My grades began to slide in elementary school and continued to get worse through junior high and high school. I was afraid to sleep at night and would have nightmares about you coming in my bedroom and kidnapping me. I was a mess because of what you did. I don't know how I survived school. My high school counselor was in our ward. You know her. And she heard a rumor from your family that I was a slut and sleeping around with ward boys, which was not even remotely true. So she called me into her office, told me that I was a sinner. She pointed out my failing grades and didn't even bother to offer help or ask me what was going on. Instead, she got together with the principal and kicked me out of high school. Did you know that? I blame that on you, Dave, as well. I blame you for a lot. I was recently asked what sort of outcome I want from all of this. First of all, I want to say that I do not want a penny of your money. Second, I want you to be treated in prison the same way you've treated me, being forced to sit on a disgusting man's lap while he gets sexual pleasure from touching your genitals over and over and over again. Third, I want your name to be in the sex offender registry so that if you ever do get out of prison, the world can be warned about you to keep their kids away from you. Fourth, I want the judge to hear me say again that when you molested me, you were in the sitting position and exerted little to no energy in order to grab me and entice me to sit on your lap. This is how all of the molestings happened. So I feel as though you are still a threat to society because you can still reach your hands out, and grab a hold of a little girl, and just like you did to me, entice them to sit on your lap. Your hands still work. Therefore, you are still a threat, and all children need to be protected from you. And fifth, I want you to apologize to all of your victims, not leaving one person out. Not because we need your apology, no, but because you need to finally make a comprehensive list of your victims and not just confess to your bishop about it. I want you to confess your crimes to the court as well. The ones that are from that town you used to live in when you were a teacher, the ones you molested or raped, I'm not sure, back in the 60s or 70s, all of them. Reach out to them, and you make things right. You need to confess to all of these people that you've molested or raped. Confess your crimes, confess your sins. You literally have nothing else to lose in this life. Now is the time to do it and get help. Now. I want you to know that I forgive you. I forgive you for molesting me for years. I forgive you for it all. But that doesn't mean I have to forget, or that I have to keep all of this secret. And it doesn't mean that I can't protect others from you either. You need help. And the law needs to step in to assist in keeping you away from little children because you can't seem to control yourself. I can forgive and be lawful. I can forgive and still have my armor up. I can forgive you and finally move on now. I am so proud of all the other victims for coming forward to the police with me. I am so grateful for the validation I received knowing that I am not alone. But just as grateful as I am for that, I am equally as horrified to know that there were other victims, some who were hurt even worse than I was. We all have a shared sisterhood now. We are strong in numbers. We are united in making sure that we get justice for what you did to us, and united in making sure that you are stopped from hurting more little girls. I am so grateful for Detective Beatty, for not only listening to me and the other victims, but for believing us. She worked hard to gather all of our statements in order to send this case to the DA's office, and for that I am forever grateful. I brought all of my journals with me that have decades worth of entries talking about what you did to me, documenting the abuse, and therefore providing me with evidence against you. You cannot deny my handwriting as a child in these. No one can say I'm a liar because I have proof that I am not. My own words, written as a child describing the horrors that I endured, are all in here, including talking about your wife witnessing what you did to me. I was going to read from some of them, but I don't have time. There's a lot of them. So I'm going to end by saying one last thing, and that is to quote one of my favorite songs that says, "Sometimes I hear my voice, and it's been here, silent all these years. Well, I'm not silent anymore. I'm here, Dave, speaking the truth and revealing all of your secrets. I am here, I'm unafraid, I am unmoving, and you can't silence me anymore." Thank you, Your Honor.
Thank you, Ms. Hodgson. I'm sure Mr. Deasing will assist you. Mr. Deasing, anyone else?
That's it. Right now.
Thank you. And Mr. Williams, would you like to address me as well today?
Yeah.
Thank you, sir.
Your Honor, before Mr. Williams addresses you, may I say a few things?
Yes, you may.
Just a couple of points before Mr. Williams talks to the court, Your Honor. First, some people that we've heard from today, I'm not sure that they understand, but the counseling that Mr. Williams sought and received, it wasn't just church counseling. I mean, he was going to someone who was a registered sex offender therapist. Rick Bashaw was a registered sex offender therapist. Rick Bashaw was not his bishop. He did talk to his bishop and other religious leaders, but the counseling that I've mentioned, Your Honor, was professional counseling by someone approved by the state with some special, whatever the special certification is to provide that kind of counseling. So it was not just religious counseling, it was professional counseling, and he went through that for 18 months, which Mr. Deasing minimized, or I'm not sure how I would characterize it, but that was the amount of counseling. That was the counseling that was offered at the time. That was what was provided. If you said, I have a problem, I have this kind of a problem, and you went to a professional therapist, then you relied on that professional therapist to advise you when you'd receive the maximum benefit of that counseling, and that's what Mr. Williams did. And then when he was finished, and so it is, I suppose, similar to Alcoholics Anonymous, but when he was finished with that counseling, the individual and group counseling, he then continued to participate in group counseling. That was the facilitator. And although some people have referred to that as ironic, or I don't know what the word was at this point, but that certainly was a sincere, a bona fide effort, a genuine effort by Mr. Williams, recognizing that, hey, I need to be involved. I need to stay involved in counseling. I need to be constantly reminded that this is something that I have to pay attention to. And that's why he continued right up, really, every Wednesday, is the way I understand it, up until the time that he was arrested. So this isn't something that he only went through religious punishment and religious counseling with his bishop and those folks. He was going to professional counseling and maintaining that all of these years, Your Honor. Ms. Johnson referred to a prior case that I was involved in, and it's true that we were involved in a jury trial. I can't remember if it was Duchesne or Vernal, but the accuser recanted, and the prosecutor, after the jury had been impaneled, dismissed the case. So I'm not sure what it is we're supposed to do about that, except that the state made that decision in that particular case. And then with regard to the statute of limitations issue, I've addressed that in the memorandum, but the church folks that Mr. Williams contacted, they're the ones that said that the statute had expired. And when I first looked at the issue and spoke to the detective in this case, I also thought that the statute had expired. So at least from Mr. Williams' perspective, recognizing that he knew he had done something inappropriate, he had relied on advice from people that he thought were able to give him sound advice, and he believed that the statute had passed. Then finally, with regard to providing an apology in Ms. Johnson's interpretation, or I'm not sure who said it, of the 12-step program, it may be that at times, or that over time, the counseling and the recommendations for counseling have changed. But at least when Mr. Williams was participating, the view was, and what he was told was, that a direct apology and reaching out to any of the victims was inappropriate and something that he should not do and would re-victimize victims. So that's what I wanted to share with the court.
Thank you, Mr. Bugden. And Mr. Williams, I'll hear from you, sir. Yes, you may. And you may want to position a microphone there.
Thank you.
And Michelle, will you just confirm that they're on? Thank you. All right. Whenever you're ready, sir.
Okay. Yes, I would like.
Michelle says it is. Is the button pushed on it? And if that one's not working, how about yours, Mr. Bugden?
And then do I need to push something to make it work?
Why don't you start?
Need to come on?
Oh, yes, we do.
Thank you. I guess that's better. Yes, I would like to address you today, Your Honor, and in response to these, I'm not going to argue with any of them or deny. I take full responsibility for the things that I did, and I have taken full responsibility for over 20 years, and I've followed the advice that I was given, and participated in the therapy and treatments that I was advised to participate in. The professional counseling I paid for myself. I worked overtime hours and did what I had to do in order to pay for that counseling myself, so that I could get the help that I needed. And it wasn't easy. It was very difficult, and it involved a lot of secrecy, I guess you would say, meeting with these people whose identities had to be protected, and it was a difficult time to go through, and I wasn't able to discuss things with my own family, counseling that I was being given, and I do want to make a point that I do want to apologize to my victims. I'm truly sorry for the behavior that I did. It was inappropriate and it was harmful, and I acknowledge that. And I'm glad now that I don't have to be holding things back and keeping things private anymore. I was counseled not to approach any of my victims because of the possible further harm that it would cause to them and their families and to others. And I followed those instructions and did what I felt I was supposed to do to protect them from further harm. But I am truly sorry and remorseful for the things that I did. and spent many nights crying myself to sleep. If that gives anybody any pleasure. And I have suffered much physically and emotionally myself. I'm responsible for that. I don't blame anybody else for that. I want to emphasize and point out that I acted on my own, that no one assisted me or no one enabled me in any way. The things I did completely on my own, my own selfish desires and lusts. And I am grateful for the help that I got. I think people were sincere and tried to do the best they could to help me and guide me where I needed to be and get the information that I needed to have to help me with my condition and help me overcome my addictions. And I'm grateful that I've been able to participate in helping others who are trying to come forward and trying to get help as well. There are many, and this isn't an easy thing. You can come forward and admit you're an alcoholic or a drug addict, and people are sympathetic and say, fine, we feel sorry for you, and we're glad you're getting help. But you come forward and say you're a sex offender, and you're immediately a monster and a horrible person, and they want to just push you away and throw away the key and forget about you. And nobody cares whether you're trying to get help and get treatment or not. And like I said, there are many out there that are trying to come forward and trying to get help. And it has the privacy has to be maintained in order to protect their ability to be able to speak out and get the help that they need. And so I've understood that people from the church and people from the support groups that I've participated in haven't been able to come forward and speak for me, and I wouldn't expect them to. I'm not going to reveal their identities, and I wouldn't expect them to come forward and speak for me, because that anonymity needs to be protected in order to keep the programs going and the good work that they're doing. We often have said in the 12-step program that we're the best kept secret in the church, because even a lot of the church leaders don't want to participate with us and don't want to support us and don't want to get involved. A lot of the bishops and stake presidents won't come forward and won't attend our meetings to see what we do, and won't refer people to us, because they just don't want to be involved with us and don't care about what we're doing, and we do care, and we're important, and we want to get the help that we deserve, and we want to be able to have something of a normal life, and I've had a good life. I can't complain. I've had a good career, and I have a loving family that support me and care about me, and I resent the implications that have been made that my wife facilitated me and helped me and enabled me in doing the things that I did. She had no idea I was doing those things, and she would have reported me if she had. That was her job and her responsibility as a teacher, and she did. She was a court-mandated reporter, and she did report people in the school system where she worked when she was aware of abuse that was occurring, and she wouldn't have hesitated for a minute to report me if she knew I was doing any of this stuff. And she had no involvement whatsoever. And I don't know what else I can say. I do apologize. I do. I'm sorry for the harm that I've caused. I know I've caused harm. I know I've hurt people, and have what I did was terribly wrong. And if there was a way I could make a restitution for it, I would. But I've been promised that through the atonement of our Savior that they will receive restitution, and they will receive blessings for the things that they suffered, and that's not my responsibility to try and do that. I don't have the power or authority to do that. There's only one person that does, and they will get the relief and the peace that they're seeking through Him, and that's our Savior Jesus Christ. I'm just okay. I'm just trying to wrap up and finish, and I am truly sorry, and I'm trying to do everything that I can in my power and ability to be remorseful and to set my life right and do the things that I've been instructed to do to change and keep my life under control. And I hope that you will have mercy and have an open mind and heart as you impose my sentence. I will accept whatever sentence that you to give to me, and I will do my best to serve and do what I need to do. And that's all I need to say at this time. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. And Mr. Deasing, I just want to be sure there wasn't an amended information. I'm still operating from the original information. Is that correct?
I believe so, yes.
All right. I'm not going to hold everybody in suspense. I am going to order a prison sentence, Mr. Williams. And given the sheer number of victims in this case, I am also ordering consecutive sentencing, beginning with count 2, 1 count of sexual abuse of a child, a second-degree felony, 1 to 15 years in the Utah State Prison, commitment to issue forthwith. Count 8, sexual abuse of a child, a second-degree felony, 1 to 15 years in the Utah State Prison, commitment to issue forthwith. Count 13, sexual abuse of a child, a second-degree felony, 1 to 15 years in the Utah State Prison, commitment to issue forthwith. Count 19, sexual abuse of a child, a second-degree felony, 1 to 15 years in the Utah State Prison, commitment to issue forthwith. Count 20, sexual abuse of a child, a second-degree felony, 1 to 15 years in the Utah State Prison, commitment to issue forthwith. Count 23, sexual abuse of a child, a second-degree felony, 1 to 15 years in the Utah State Prison, commitment to issue forthwith. And count 24, sexual abuse of a child, a second-degree felony, commitment to issue forthwith. I am ordering each of these counts to be consecutive to each other. After hearing the thoughts, the sentiments, and the experiences from 4 separate brave victims today, there is no doubt the defendant's conduct has caused lifelong trauma and anxiety. The abuse they suffered, the victims are not likely to forget that abuse. The worst part is they blame themselves. They are angry at themselves. But the circumstances were not under their control. In this case, consecutive sentencing is appropriate Given the sheer number of victims, it is shocking and concerning. Given the gravity and the circumstances of the offenses, sexually violating young children, some of the most vulnerable in our population. Consecutive sentencing will give the defendant and the board an opportunity to assess the circumstances going forward, to monitor the defendant, and to give the defendant the opportunity to participate in the necessary treatment. And for that reason, I am ordering each count to be consecutive. Mr. Williams, you do have the right to appeal in 30 days. You also have the right to an attorney to assist with that appeal. Good luck, sir. And we will be in recess until our next hearing at 11 o'clock.